So in the meantime, I guess another thing that I had questions about as a guy that went to an alternative high school. So I think for me, my perspective on alternative high schools is they're almost kind of halfway in between public schools and private schools. So
Right.
what is kind of your viewpoint on alternative schools? Do you think that they provide a good form of innovation, or do you think that they're kind of I'll be honest with mine. There was a lot of student involvement. Personally, I was the head of our fundraising committee, and I had to raise a lot of money to make things happen for our school that a traditional high school would not have to raise.
Right.
So I was wondering what, like, your opinion on alternative high schools, which are, I guess, for people who don't know, they're sort of like charter schools, but they're run by the public school district. Am I right about that, Aaron?
Correct. Yeah. And so my son wouldn't have graduated high school without an alternative school. So both my kids, my youngest one went to an alternative middle school that was like a performing arts slash gifted education alternative school. And then my older son is severely dysgraphic, and he needed a smaller school environment, so he went to an alternative high school in high school. I think it depends on the district. So I have seen fantastic alternative schools, and then I've seen those alternative schools that are in the worst building in the district that absolutely suck, and the teachers there don't get any support, and they've got all the oldest books that need to be thrown away. So I think it's all about how we invest in them. I've seen alternative schools that have incredible innovation and are doing robotics with kids and have wraparound services for students. If you haven't watched the film Paper Tigers, you need to watch the film Paper Tigers. It is about a school in Walla Walla called Lincoln Alternative School. It was founded by a guy named Jim Sporleader. He was the principal there. And they serve kids that have alcohol, drug dependency issues, abuse, trauma. But all their staff are trauma informed, so they all know how to address the needs of students who have experienced trauma. And they're doing really amazing work. So I think, much like charter schools, they're not all equal. It's really how you choose to invest in those programs or not. And so I think, as state superintendent, what I want is I want to have high quality for every kid. So we have to hold our alternative schools, all schools, to a really high standard, and then provide them with high levels of support.
Excellent. It looks like I think Michael's just about ready to join us there, Michael.
Great.
Go
You
ahead
hear
there.
me?
Yes. Go for it.
All right, great. Hi, Aaron. Sorry for the
That's
coming in
okay.
late. I went technical difficulty. I listened to nearly everything you said, and all of it to me is music to my ears. Number one. Number two, I think Richard gave me a little bit too much credit, but I appreciate it. Oddly, we all have a lot in common here. I'm the father of three biracial kids, and my oldest son, who's not biracial, has two biracial daughters. So we got a lot going on here. And also, I spent a lot of time in the Netherlands.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I spent 6 years in the Netherlands. My favorite city in the world is Maastricht.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So and Praten Beach in Netherlands also.
Yeah, ik ook, yeah.
Okay, now that's enough of that. So, I guess the biggest question here that always comes to my mind is funding. What do we do about? I don't know how it works in Tacoma, but what do you do about the property tax shortfalls? Right. That's my.
And I think across the country, one of the things that I was shocked by when I came to the United States is we have baked inequity into the system in how we fund schools, period. When we fund schools based on property tax, it ensures that those kids who live in high poverty communities will have the least amount of resources. We have baked that into the system, and that has to be called out. We have got to call that out as a country, not just as a state, but as a nation. We need to call that out, that we got to stop asking for Finland results when we're not willing to invest Finland's resources. And for those of you who don't know Finland, they invest incredible amounts in public education, and they have the highest results in the world right now. And we want those kind of results, but we're not willing to invest that kind of resources in schools, and we leave our poor communities out in the cold.
Yes, and we're also not willing to change the way we do things, right? We're not willing to give kids more time off. We're not willing to give give kids longer summers or whatever the case may be. We're not willing to do that, and that's that American mentality of, you don't go around the obstacle, you go through the obstacle. That's the American way. That's
Yeah.
hurting us as well. I mean,
No,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I was just going to say you're right. And I think the United States, we're also not very intentional here. We love to wait until something's failing and then try to fix it instead of being proactive. I mean, one of the things that I love about the Netherlands or Finland or Germany is they're very proactive. I mean, they look, okay, what are the needs of our students? How do we make sure everyone has health care, everybody has food, everyone has housing? Here, it's like you got to prove you're failing enough before we'll step in and say, oh, let's find you some Section 8 housing. And we wait until stuff is so far gone before we invest in it, when that we end up investing more resources because we haven't done it on the front end.
But I think that's part of the corporatization of education, right? Because we think everything is about financial outcomes as opposed to the outcomes for the children, which is an investment, which is another area where we're failing. We don't see it as an investment. We see it as a gift to someone who's going to run off and use it to, I don't know, for whatever.
Right.
Whatever. I don't know what the logic is in not investing in children, no matter where they come from, or who they are.
And one of the things I believe for those rich people, I'm like, you know what? If you would invest in your poor children, we'd have less kids in prison. You'd be spending less money on all the other bad stuff. If we would just invest in those poor kids, you wouldn't have a bunch of older kids going to ER because they didn't get health care in the front end. Rich people could actually get richer if we served the poor well.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I often say. I said this in a conversation with Brandon last week. Is that I often tell the conservatives that I spar with around here is that if you wouldn't have to worry about your house getting robbed and all those other things you say you're worried about if you took better care of people, right?
Amen.
A person with a job education is much less likely to rob your house. I mean, it's just a reality. But they're not willing to make that investment, which is, there's a lot playing. There's a lot of things at play there. There's race, there's class, there's education level, there's all kinds of things going on there, and a lot of it is greed. But,
I'd like to hop in here real quick, and sorry, Dave, if I'm doing this to you, but you don't have to get me too much of a shot. You can just single. I'm going to ask them kind of both the question quickly here. So I know Brandon's mentioned it before, and I know I've thought about it, and others have brought it up, is the idea of more integration, and you mentioned it, talking about growing up in the Netherlands, going to a school with 70 plus languages being spoken, and the power of integrating different folks in not just racially, but economically. And so that if some of these rich kids were at these schools that are being underserved, that it would become more real both for those kids and for their parents about what that underservice actually means in real life terms. And is there a feasible way to do something like that, whether it's at a very basic level of like an exchange student program, but interstate or within the state and just between economic areas? Or because I noticed I had a friend way back that came from Germany, and when he told us about the difference in the educational experience, the common theme was, I can't believe that this is what they're teaching at this level. Like, this is stuff I learned in elementary or junior high, and so that gave me insight into the educational system and had me asking questions and made me realize that I was being underserved in the type of education I was being provided, and so on and so forth. So I wonder, could we use an economic version of an exchange student program in some way to try and address some of the issues between the difference in funding?
Well, it's interesting. So there have been several schools that have done that, actually. And I can't remember, there's a TED Talk or a NPR show on an exchange that was done, I think in Illinois somewhere, where they sent all students from an all-black urban school out to the suburban school outside of Chicago. Powerful experience for both sets of kids. They also have done a new research article came out maybe 3 months ago or 4 months ago that talks about the importance of busing and integration, not just racially but socioeconomically, and that's really what's going to improve our schools, is if we have multiple socioeconomic backgrounds in one school system. I also have another, if I could have a wand and just do magic for a day, I would make every state decision maker spend a day in a high poverty school. Because my personal opinion is that if you've never experienced it before, if your kids don't, trust me, if you're a senator, your kids never went to a Title I school. I mean, maybe there's one senator and all of the senators and state representatives, but for the most part, these are people whose children never went to that kind of school. So they make decisions based on the kind of school their kids go to, which is fine. My children started school in a Title I school, a failing school. They went to their second school was also a Title I school, 1,000 kids in an elementary school. My son had to walk half a mile to the portable where his fourth grade class met. I understand this stuff because I had skin in the game. I think too many of our decision makers don't have any skin in the game. And so it's easy to push funding off till next year. Oh, we're fine now, because they're fine.
Yeah, and we have viewers from all across the country, and so they might not understand. But I mean, I'm sure in other states there's also issues about lottery being presented as an opportunity to fund education and then getting dumped into a general fund to be used basically as they see fit.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not even that the money isn't there, it's that basically they reallocate it, took it, whatever phrasing one chooses to use, but like the funding was created and we had an idea and the funding just didn't end up going where we were told it was going to end up. And so there's a larger issue going on there, which is unfortunate. And I know it's happening in Washington and probably several other states, but I'm glad to hear that you mentioned those programs are happening in elsewhere. I wonder what we can do to help try to ramp those up or to expose their effectiveness.
Again, it's about treasure hunting, though. We got to tell that story at the state level. We got to tell those stories so that other people who are brave can try to do the same thing.